Hey, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co. and today I'm reviewing Fire and Stone from Pegasus Spill. Fire and Stone is a 2 to 4 player gateway game of exploration. You're going to be having your little meeples over here, and you're going to be moving your meeples around the board as you slowly expand and explore this entire area. You're going to start off in the first region of the board, and a basic turn in this game consists of moving your meeple up to 2 spaces away, resolving the effect wherever they land, which sometimes is unknown and other times will be known as the map is explored. So you're going to go ahead and take your meeple. Let's go, we move over here, we flip that over. This is going to be a mushroom, and in this case, we can choose to add it or just take food. We're going to, in this case, take this tile, and because we already have a mushroom on our own personal track here, we are able to put it accelerating up the track, and once we get to the top there, we'll get specific bonuses in terms of technologies or victory point cards. We'll come back to our turn, because for the sake of this demo over here, we'll just be having us over here wander around the map. We're going to go ahead and go 1, 2 to the next zone, flipping this over, and what do we have? We have walnuts. Now this time around, we don't actually have a walnut. We could choose to discard something else and put it on the board, but in this case, we're going to leave it there for someone else to take, and instead we're going to take 2 food, putting it on our little bags over here, keeping in mind that you do have a limited number of slots to hold food, and now any food I get will be completely wasted. We'll again continue going 1, 2, and flip this over, and what do we have here? This time we have a hut. The huts represent a lot of the progress in the game. We're going to take the hut, we're going to move it to that track, and we'll put a hut down in this zone. Now when additional players move here, and that includes myself, they now have a new option. Sometimes when you remove a place from the board, sometimes when you remove one of these, you can just go ahead and gather food from one of these locations, but over here, when we have a settlement over here, we're going to have the opportunity to put more huts down on the board, which is going to be a big part of the scoring in this game. Each hut costs food based on the huts already there, which means adding huts to a place with huts gets progressively more and more expensive, but having control over the area will be worth points, so it's going to be a tightly contested area as players try to add their huts to those zones. But additionally, the huts also trigger a bit of the progress of the game. As you add huts to the board, you're eventually going to unlock the second sector. You can't actually move into here until we have our 3rd hut discovered. When you get to your 5th hut over here, you're going to unlock another meeple and start being able to explore more. When you get to your 9th hut, you're going to unlock the 3rd area over here, and then finally we're going to trigger endgame when you get to that last hut there. So the huts represent a timer to the game. We'll go ahead and start flipping over some other tokens so you have an idea of what's going on here. When you flip over, you know we have more resources. We have a forest over here. When you move over here, you can gather a forest. You're going to get rid of this forest, gather 3 forest tiles, put them there, and you'll be able to have access to looking at one of those tiles first, choosing what you get. In this case, we're going to add 2 bags. This represents going hunting in the game. Other players will still have the opportunity to go there, although they don't know what they're getting. And in our case, we're going to go ahead and cash that token in and add 2 more bags to our slot, giving us the ability to carry more food in the game. Now, you're also going to have this campfire here. You have to actually go to the campfire over there. You're going to have to put your tokens down here. You'd actually have to get to a campfire spot on the board before you can go ahead and turn your bags and your food into the tokens into what they are over there. You know, keep having spots on the board you can go to. There's another campfire. We have more campfires. We have more apples. We have more forest over here. Slowly progressing and adding more to the board until you eventually find all the things you need to find over there, trying to get more of the huts over there. You can also have this zone in the second area. You have a zone for the cave over here, which represents one of a whole bunch of cards that you can set up at the beginning of the game. There's a whole stack of these cards, each with their own specific rules that come into play when that cave is discovered in the second sector over here. And then we have the technologies and the points. Technologies and the points are going to come into play from these tracks over here. As you move to the top of these tracks, you'll be able to gather a technology card, which will help you, give you some sort of extra thing. Your scout can move along sea routes. Now, if you have a scout over here, they can go over here, or they can go over here. They can move along these sea routes in the game, giving you more flexibility. You'll have being able to pay less food whenever you place something in area 3 or more huts. You have all these different options as far as other things, other technologies you can add to the game. And then more importantly, once you have a technology, we can gather shipbuilding, for example, but the next time we go to the top of this track, we can choose to cover shipbuilding with a point card, which is worth the point shown. In this case, 4 points, but you have to give up the technology. You're going to go through these cards over here. There's only 2 4s, then a bunch of 3s, then a bunch of 2s, and a bunch of 1s. So it is first come, first serve in terms of getting those higher point totals, but you are giving up the fact that you're giving up technologies that can otherwise help you do things in the game. That is basically what's happening in Fire and Stone. You're basically moving around the map, you're moving your explorers 1 to 2 spaces. Once you unlock that second explorer, you can move both of them every turn, so that's very helpful. And you're trying to move around the board to try to unlock things, to try to gather, to try to put huts down, to gather the resources you need, the food you need, because you're going to need food to put those huts down, and just slowly explore the board bit by bit until the game ends, which brings me to the review, starting off with ease of play. Rulebook is pretty easy to go through. It's like 6 pages, I guess, because it's double-sided, so 5, 6 pages of rules. For the most part, the turn sequence sequence is you go ahead and you move, you resolve the spot. Everything else comes down to just going through each section by section, what each spot does, but for the most part it's fairly basic, and it's the kind of game you could start off, depending on who you're playing with, you could start off with young audiences by just explaining what to do, and then explaining everything as they come out. To some small extent, you lack some degree of the strategic choices around your first few moves until you understand things, but not that much, and it does give you a lower barrier to entry, especially if starting it off with younger players. Game time comes in around 45 minutes. It could go faster, it could go a bit slower, but somewhere around the 45-minute mark. As far as what I like, don't like, and can see others not liking, first of all, in terms of what I like, the technologies in the game give you already part of your competitive advantage. Getting technologies from these, slowly refilling the slot, getting more technologies, each time you gain an animal tile, gain one food, you get different options for the technologies, and how you use those to feed into your engine give you some of that competitive advantage, and then there's also choices to when you cover this up with a point tile, because that will help you, get more points, but at the cost of technology, but it could be a chunk of points in this game, and the points aren't that high in this game that you're going to want to try to get those 4s if you can, for sure those 3s. You also have your own private scoring goal, which I didn't talk about, but every player is going to have one of those as well. But you're trying to get those technologies, and then that's a big part of what I like over there. But past that, there's a general sense of adventure and discovery as far as wandering around the board. This has a game where you're moving, exploring. You're just trying to uncover things as you go. The map is going to be different every single time. Well, the map's the same, but the way the ones are distributed, the 2s and the 3s, the game has some sense of scaling to make sure things are a little bit balanced, and the game shows you what's in different zones as far as the campfires or the huts, so you have some degree of knowledge. But past that, it's about that, what am I going to uncover? And then once you do uncover things, how players are going to react versus that sense of looking for something new versus looking for something that they can, specifically know what they're getting. They know that they're going to a campfire, they're building a hut, they're roasting things. So, well, getting the forest and hunting and whatnot. So it has that general sense of adventure and discovery. As far as what I don't like in the game, there's not a lot of reason to dive back into the game time after time, past this card over here. This specific card that goes into this spot over here, there's like a whole bunch of these, I don't know, there's like 20 of these cards that go here, each giving you a single rule instance that's different, which is interesting the way they implemented that, because it is definitely a different card, but it's like this one singular location that has a different rule every time, and the rest of the game is exactly the same, so it gives you a tiny sense of variability in the game that I almost wish, like, even if each sector had a zone like that, it would already significantly improve the variability of this game, but right now it's like, here's the exact same game, and one small rules difference. There's not a lot of reasons to dive back in, and the fact that the game very much is on the lighter side. I mean, this game is completely random as far as what turns up. It's wander and explore, wander and explore. It is not a strategy game that's meant to, like, tickle your brain of what to do here, what to do there. This is a game of teaching you basic gameplay mechanics, having a sense of exploration, choosing what to flip over, making some degree of choices, but ultimately is very much a lighter explorative game, and that combined with the low variability means there's just not a lot of reason to continue to dive back in. The technologies are the biggest thing to try to explore, different combinations of technologies. It's very much on the lighter side with a low variability to the gameplay. As far as what I can see others not liking, first of all, if you don't get bags in this game, those, those sacks over here where you can store more food, if you don't get them, and there's not as many as you might think as far as the animal tiles, they are harder to get your hands on, but if you don't get them, you are going to have a harder time storing food and doing a lot of other things in the game. I would say that there's a lot of things as far as where you can min-max this or that, but you do have to get your hands on bags, which does tie a bit into just the sheer luck of the experience. If you don't, you'll have a hard time building up the food supply you need to be able to actually viably fight for those heavier competition areas in the game. And additionally, it falls into this weird spot where it's almost a bit too complicated in the rule set to be a good gateway game versus too lucky to be well, a heavy strategy game. The game itself, the rules are fairly easy to dive in, but it's just like, as opposed to being a pure simple mechanism here, this, that, the other, it kind of has the game turn is simplified, but each location has a slightly different rule set and a little extra thing to expand upon. It almost has that Mage Knight aspect of everything's a little different. It is not the complexity of Mage Knight. That's a terrible comparison. Ignore what I just said. But it has that aspect where there's just a little bit more going on as far as keeping track of all the rules to be a solid introductory gateway game, so it falls into this weird spot there. As far as final thoughts on Fire and Stone, I wanted to like this game. I believe it's by the designer of Carcassonne, if I'm not mistaken, and I wanted to like this one a lot more than I actually did. The game has some basic gameplay mechanisms that have a degree of appeal to them, but the actual experience is just very light. It's very light, it's very random, it's complete luck fest of just move your person around the board, flip over a tile, get the thing, rinse and repeat, and then decide whether that's something you want to dive back in on. This is not by any means a terrible game. This game has a degree of exploration, it has a degree of procedural aspect. My kids did enjoy playing this. I unfortunately did not enjoy playing it. I thought it was, again, way too luck driven and just not satisfying enough with that extra degree of rules complexity that felt out of place for just how, well, lucky the game overall is. For me, this is a 2.5 out of 5. Not a game for me, unfortunately. As far as other game recommendations, first of all, Carcassonne. I do recommend Carcassonne if you're looking for a game that can operate on multiple levels, both being accessible and easy to dive into. I think Carcassonne is an easier game to teach than this one, while giving you more strategic depth than Fire and Stone does. Overall, highly recommend Carcassonne. And then secondly, Small Islands. If you're looking for a game that has a degree of tiling, exploration, Small Islands from Lucky Duck Games is another game that falls into a similar weight class as far as Fire and Stone, but being, I think, a slightly better choice. In any case, until next time, I hope you found this video helpful. I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co., and I hope you have a good one.